Welcome to this episode of Diary of a CEO. I'm Stephen Bartlett, and my guest today is Mo Ismail. I'm just kidding. Clearly, I'm not Stephen Bartlett. You can tell the melanin is a little bit different, but this is Diary of a CDO. That's me, Chris D.O. My friend Mo's in town. We're having deep conversations by the pool and the restaurant, and we thought we're being a little selfish if we don't share this with the world. And we're going to talk about lots of things that might hit you personally, emotionally, and trigger some people, but also take it back to the professional world. You're going to see that these two worlds that we live in, they're actually the same world. And once we figure that out, it's a very powerful idea, and you're going to unlock something new in your mind today.
So I consider you to be somebody who's, for lack of a better term, you probably wouldn't say this about yourself, but like a modern day philosopher.
Okay.
I really appreciate how you think. I appreciate how you look at the world. And I appreciate the way in which you break down certain observations. I know that you travel a lot. I know that you're a father. And me and you have discussed this concept of being present, whether you're at work or you're at home. I want to hear your perspective on when you're traveling and you're away from your family. One, how are you feeling? And then talk to me a little bit about this notion of like missing your family or not missing your family.
Sure.
Is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my position on this has evolved over the years. I was a person who's pretty late to travel. So first, when you get on the plane and you're away from home, all the creature comforts, you start to feel homesick, the familiar rhythms, the sound, even missing my bed. Let's just talk about that. I'm a very light sleeper, so the sounds in the hotel, the trays that go by, the loud people who come back at 2 a.m, they would wake me up, and I was just feeling very uncomfortable. And I also felt like a duty or an obligation or responsibility to call and check in with my family. And here's the weird thing. My wife's a very pragmatic person. So when I would call, she's like, what do you want? I'm like, babe, I'm just calling to see if everything's okay. She's like, no, you're doing your thing. I'm dealing with all the mess you left behind. So I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Well, I'm taking care of the kids. The plumbing's broken, and there's contractors coming by, and I'm juggling lots of things. So I think for her, not only have I done one wrong thing, I've done two wrong things. The first thing is to leave, and then so she's carrying the weight of the household by herself as the chief home officer. Number two is now I'm interrupting whatever she was doing so that I can feel like I'm connected. So this wasn't about her, it was about me. And I soon started to realize that. So my wife is not one much, let's do the little goo-goo gaga talk and let's tell each other how much we miss each other and we can't wait to see each other. So if something interesting, exciting, relevant is happening, then we'll have a conversation. Otherwise, I've learned over the years now, I don't call her. I don't call her not because I don't miss her or I think about her. It's because it's actually not helpful for her. Because she might have been doing yoga, she might have been cooking, she could have been doing lots of different things. And I'm just interrupting when I'm free, not when she's free. And so now when I travel, I don't really call her. I'll take pictures, I'll DM, I'll text, and I'll just leave it like that, because I think that form of asynchronous communication allows the other person to interact it when they feel like it's appropriate. And if she says, hey, babe, I miss you, that's my cue to give her a call and check in. And it's a moment for us to kind of share what's going on. But I'm having a conversation with my friend because usually when I'm traveling, especially on a long stint, I go pretty radio silent on social media. So I'm not really calling and checking in with people. I'm not answering messages because I'm busy, I'm tired, and I'm usually preparing for the next thing, the next workshop, the next talk. And so I get back after a couple of weeks of travel, radio silence, and everybody's like, is he dead? Is it? And people are just clamoring in my DMs, send us photos. What are you eating? Where are you? We need to be updated. And It's kind of a strange new arc in my life. But then I said, this person said to me, hey, I really miss talking to you. And I was really looking forward to having this conversation. And that was just a buzz in my brain. And I said, why do you miss people? I've kind of developed this natural reaction to whenever anybody says anything. I start to examine it in myself. Like, is this true? Do I miss things? Do you miss things? Why do people miss people? Is this an important thing for us to go through? And then she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I don't really miss you, and I don't really miss my kids, and I don't really miss my wife. It's not that I don't think about them. It's not that I don't care. Well, what is this idea of missing? And then I said to my friend this idea. I said, so you remember something that's happened and you're holding on to that memory. So when you're here now away from that moment, you don't desire to be here. It's a longing. Your heart aches for that. And then let's say you had a really great meal at this really nice restaurant and you're looking forward to it. So now you're missing that as well. So the meal that you're eating right now doesn't taste so good and the environment doesn't. Everything's being compared to something else except for right now. So I started really thinking that I know there's a future that has yet to happen, and there's a past that is now in the rearview mirror. But all we have is this moment right now, the present, you and I being here, grounded, connected in this moment in space, sharing the same air, feeling each other's energies, the way you look, the way you smell, the frequency, the vibrations, all those kinds of things. I keep thinking about that. So what happens is, let me illustrate it this way. Let's say you love pizza. You probably don't, but let's just say you do. And there's this great pizza place, and you eat this pizza, and it was just it's like a euphoric, almost orgasmic experience for you. You're like, this is so freaking good. And now you're away from that place that makes that pizza, so you're longing and reconnecting to that memory, and you're always comparing, well, this pizza's not as good. This salad doesn't compare. This steak is not as good, that piece of fish. And so you're constantly battling that memory. And memory's a funny thing. And this is a strange concept that I still have yet to wrap my head around, which is by recalling a memory, you change the memory. This is what happens because we romanticize the ideas and we catastrophize negative things. Things are much worse when we remember them, when they were bad to begin with, and things are much better. That's why we always pine for the good old days. Things are never the way they were, and we're constantly comparing because things weren't that good when they were happening. It's just your memory of it makes it even better. So now you're in this pocket where you're like, you know what? I got a trip coming up. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to be there in July, and I'm going to have that pizza again. So you're building up expectations again. This is a funny thing about expectations. When you get there, maybe it's not exactly the way you recall. Like, oh, the standards is not as good anymore.
So true.
But let's look at the peaks and the valleys of your emotional well-being here. So there's that emotional high of the pizza you had, and let's just say this one lives up to it. Rarely does it ever live up to it. Then you just have this trough in between of like, nothing is as good, nothing is good. So instead of being grateful to being present to where you're at in the moment with the people that you're sharing space with, or the food that you're eating, or even the room that you're in, whether it's your bedroom or a hotel room, a motel room, on the couch of a friend's place, you're not really, really present because we keep thinking about either the past or the future, neither of which we can have. We just have the moment. So I start to discipline myself. When I'm here, I want to be here. And I notice something when I travel, and everybody's traveled to something like, especially a conference, multi-day conference, a festival. Everybody's calling their wives, their husbands, their partners. They want to talk to their cat. And I'm like, what about us in this room right now? We're sitting here, we're waiting for you to rejoin the conversation. And it's actually a modern phenomenon because everybody's so easily connected or distracted. I think it's reverse connection. We're not connecting to the people that are in front of us. And we're constantly thinking about things. Our phones are buzzing. We're checking messages. We're reporting to the team. So are you really here? So in the past couple of years, it's a really relatively new phenomenon for me. I'm just trying to be 100% here all the time. So if I'm watching a movie with you, I'm not thinking about my work. And I'm at work, I'm not thinking about binging on the Netflix series. I'm not thinking about anything else except for the thing that I do. We have a finite amount of time. We have 24 hours. If we are good to ourselves, we're about 16 hours of productive work. And focused productive work is even shorter. And so I can get more stuff done than most people because in that moment, that's all I'm doing. I've optimized my mind, my work environment, my tools, the palettes in my software tool set to be optimized for the singular purpose of doing this thing. Yesterday, you were talking to me and I went silent. And you're like, bro, you're going to give me the answer? I said, I'm thinking. But usually, if you don't get an answer from somebody, it's because they're so focused on something else that we just need to know that. And we need not to interrupt that. So an agreement that I have with my wife, and we see it in each other all the time, is when the other person's deep in thought, don't interrupt them. It doesn't look like much, but they're walking and you can tell because my eyes are moving in a different place. I'm not really looking at the environment. It's off usually into the horizon, into the future, because I'm processing an idea. And oftentimes it's because I'm out of the shower and some brilliant thing has come to me and I think I need to keep replaying this in my mind until I can transcribe it onto a piece of paper. And she sees it. She's like, honey, what do you want to, and it's usually something trivial, like, what do you want to eat for dinner later tonight? I'm like, it doesn't matter, you pick. Actually, I need to figure something out. I'm working on a problem right now. And she goes, oh, I know. We have that shortcut, that shorthand with each other that we know. And same thing with her. If she's sitting there meditating, kids, no, don't talk to mom right now. She's finding that moment where she can get clarity in her mind. It's important we don't interrupt people. So sometimes I'll walk into the bedroom, I see her in the lotus position. It's very dark in the room. I just gently close the door and moonwalk my way out of there. Because unless I have to use something in that room, I don't want to go there. So this is what I mean. Like, we need to be grounded and present in the moment. And people don't fully understand that. They think that by having all their notifications turned on, that calling people, FaceTiming them while they're somewhere else, it's like, you know what? Here's the weird thing. It's the worst compromise. And I think there was a quote up on the Vesta board that it said something like, a good compromise is when neither party's happy. And that was like from a comedian. A good compromise is when neither party's happy. So it's just constantly not being where we are, thinking about the past or the future. And I know it's ironic because the company is called The Future, but I'm trying to be very much in the present.
So you covered a lot.
Yeah.
I'm doing my diligence to take as many notes as possible. But the last thing that we talked about is something I want to kind of touch on and then go back to something earlier in the conversation. What you just described is actually what happened between me and you today. We were talking upstairs on the patio across from your pool, and my wife called me. And I know that given the time difference, it was appropriate to answer just then. And you were very gracious when I said, hey, my wife just called me. I'm going to go ahead and take this for a few minutes, and then we can reconvene. Hearing you now, it's a disservice to our moment, and it could have potentially, I don't know, interrupted her moment, created the sense of FOMO. But her and I have an agreement of checking in once a day in the morning, once a day in the evening, because we have children together. So what do you prescribe as a better way to have handled that situation now that I'm hearing that an act like that is diminishing the moment me and you were having?
This is a little bit different because you have a pre-agreement, like a pre-arranged agreement where we're going to check in with each other once in the morning, once at night. So everybody feels connected no matter where you are in the world. And I think that works really well for you. You have small children. I don't. My children are adults at this point. And if my children don't desire that, then it's not something I want to do.
Correct.
I'm very mindful of like doing something that the other person would be perceived as helpful and as an act of love, not because you think it is. And I've lived a lot of my life where people give me things, do things for me, where I think that's what you want to get, but it's not what I want to get. So I try to be gracious about receiving gifts, even though I'm like, that's not what I want. And are you paying attention to what I want? And this is really important. This I learned in therapy many, many years ago, where I got into a fight with my wife because I did something that I thought was helpful, but she didn't perceive as helpful. It's the classic example of what a lot of men do and screw up all the time, which is I cleaned up her desktop, not her workspace, but her desktop on her computer. And then when she came home, she flipped her lids like, you messed up my system. I have a system. You might not like it, but I like it. And her system is 1,000 files on the folder, or the desktop.
On the desktop.
You know, as many creatives are. And mine's like, there's a folder. I got to organize. I got to label it. I use correct naming convention and protocol. Because unlike her, who can work at leisure and find things when she finds them, I have to find things within seconds. And usually it's because I'm in a tired state of mind. I can't exert more mental processing power to find a file. So it's very frustrating for me. So I'll spend hours tidying up my files in waves where it's like, okay, now it's where it's supposed to be. In the moment, it's a little sloppy, but I go back and clean things up. So that was for her. Why are you trying to exert your system on my system? And she didn't like that. And I was really offended because I'm like, I spent all this time organizing your files, fixing your computer, you ungrateful girl, you. And then I realized I was at fault because I was trying to be helpful, but what I was doing is not being perceived as helpful. And this may be the pin for another conversation where you and I have about nonviolent thinking, nonviolent communication, and how we move throughout the world.
I want you to go real meta here on this one, because I consider that many people, whether it's communication, relationships, in business, whatever the context is, they have a really hard time detaching from what they think other people need versus what other people actually need. So were you able to come to this place where you don't feel a sense of, well, I just did this amazing thing for you, right? But becoming more in tune with what does this other person need and how can I meet that need?
Well, what I learned from my therapist is she said, why do you want to do any of this? It's because I love my wife. I want to take care of her. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I'm looking out for her. I don't know. She goes, okay, well, it's important then that your wife feels loved by you. I said, yes. Why don't you ask her? So here's what she told me to do, and this is like free therapy for all of you guys. It really is. When I say free therapy, I mean I'm not trying to be your therapist, but I'm sharing something I learned and I paid money for that you can then take if you wish. Okay? Here's what she said. Before you do something, ask. Oftentimes we're given requests by people, strangers, friends, coworkers, boss, employees, whatever. and we don't have enough information, and we start to act because we think it's like obvious, right? But it's not so obvious apparently. So she told me to say this very specific thing. When your wife asks you to do something, say, honey, I want to help, but I want to make sure that what I'm doing is perceived as helpful. I don't have enough information. If you're busy, why don't we talk about it when you have more time? Or if you have time now, let's talk about it now. And oftentimes when I do that, well, the first couple of times I did that, she gave me a funny look. She's like, you've been seeing Joan again, haven't you? I can tell those are not the words that come out of your mouth. I said, babe, I made those sounds. And she goes, but you're like a monkey robot. I said, sure, because I'm a good student. I'm not trying to improvise this. This is what I was told to do is what I'm doing. And then she would say, I don't have time for that right now. I say, okay, cool. We'll circle back when you're ready and free again. More often than not, she's not that free. It's not that important. So I saved myself from doing something that would most likely be perceived as being wrong. And my wife is like from Taiwan. She's pretty black and white. When you do something, it needs to be right or don't do it. Because it's more annoying that you did it and you did it wrong. So she says, go get my jacket. I don't go get the jacket. I said, what jacket do you want me to get? And so she has to describe it pretty clearly before I leave. Because if I go get that jacket and come back, it's the wrong jacket. She's like, oh, you never pay attention to my needs. You're always doing the wrong thing. I'm like, what? I could have sat here and refused to get your jacket. And this is, I think, the root of a lot of miscommunication and friction that is unnecessary between relationships of any type. We do things where we have incomplete information, where when it's done, the other person doesn't feel like you're paying attention. It's a critical skill. Let's take this out of the personal realm and move into the professional space. When your clients come to you and ask you for a logo or website, we don't have clearly defined expectations of outcomes. We don't know what the next steps are, and we don't communicate any of that. Mostly it's because we're afraid of the friction. We're afraid of asking for more information or going through enough details so the other person feels reassured that we heard them and that they understand what the next steps are. So our avoidance of the friction in the moment creates a lot more friction in the future. And it's one of the most powerful lessons I learned from my business coach, the thing that allowed me to double my revenue from $2.2 million to 3.9, which is say what it is you think. Ask more questions. Ask clarifying questions. And that gives the other person a sense of you see me, you hear me, you understand me. And that's how we won business for things we had no right to win. How we were able to jump categories from doing motion design to brand identity design to doing exhibition design and designing virtual reality experiences. Things I have no right to claim that I can do. But when a client feels you're in rapport and you understand them, they give you a lot more latitude to do things with the full expectation. This is not your expertise. I'm asking if you can help me. So it's a request from them. No more pitching, no more selling, no more presenting.
Honey, I want to help, but I want to make sure that what I do is perceived as helpful. If you're busy right now, when you're free, can we discuss what exactly would be helpful to you?
Yeah.
That's the breakdown.
I don't have enough information. Yes.
I don't have enough information.
And I'm afraid what I'm going to do is going to be perceived as unhelpful.
I don't have enough info. Break that down for me. What are you like? I understand the question, and many people might take it and blanket statement, right? And become robots. And we've seen this happen in role plays, right? That's great because you got to copy to learn. But I want you always teach me in the beginning stages, yes, if you're trying to become an artist like this particular artist, copy the art, and then modify. But break down the thinking for me. So let's just, I segmented. Honey, I want to help, but I want to make sure that what I do is perceived as helpful. What are you doing just in that beginning statement right there?
You're setting the frame to say like, I have my frame of what I think is helpful, but it's more important that I understand your frame. And so I need to see the world through your eyes.
So that's the seeing part.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm hearing and seeing. I need to hear more words, and please describe it to me, so that eventually the words allow me to see what you see. And then I'm going to play back what I saw. And then you're going to tell me it's right or wrong. You're going to make some adjustments.
Now, the if you're busy part, that's more contextual. Maybe your wife was busy at the time, or is that
I'll tell you why
for everything?
It's almost appropriate for everything. I'll tell you why. People aren't as clear in their thinking as we'd like them to be, myself included. And then we use shorthand words that we assume everyone knows. And we're always in a rush. No matter what we're doing, we're always in a rush. So I say, hey, Mo, can you work on a new video for me and change the thumbnail? And you're like, cool, I got you. But what did you get? We haven't yet seen eye to eye on anything.
Correct.
right?
I can already see the parallels in business around all of this.
A ton. Client calls you. I need a new logo. I hear you do great logos. Great. Here's the invoice. Let's start. Based on what? You don't even understand.
Right.
So people, and we've seen this in numerous role plays, they ask 2 or 3 questions, no follow-up questions, and they're like, okay, let's get started. I'm like, why would I do that? You don't even know what it is I want. Actually, I don't even like you. Why would you send me a proposal?
I don't even like you.
I mean,
That's so funny.
because do you understand me?
Right. Well, you need to feel understood in the moment.
In the creative space, we have to get a lot of abstract things right for this to work. So we need to know, are we inspired by the same things? Do you have the same aesthetic that I have? Can you elevate the crude, unrefined, generic, abstract ways that I describe things into something much more precise that we both could nod our head and said, exactly. Oh my God, you just took my thing, you elevated it. But most creatives don't have language skills, don't have the clarity of thought themselves, might be a little ADHD, are afraid of the friction, so they can't stay in the pocket and have the conversation with the person. And this leads to a lot of misunderstanding and frustration. I've seen this. This is not me speaking esoterically like I've read about in a book or I watched in a movie once or twice. I've worked with now hundreds of artists. I'm on both sides as a buyer and a seller of creative services. I know how to buy it. I know how to sell it. So when I see somebody missing the gap, I help them become more informed buyers or I help them become more informed sellers because I know what needs to be done. So I will do both roles for you because at the end of the day, if I screw up as a service provider or if I screw up as the buyer, I've wasted time and money.
Right.
Sometimes it's my money. Sometimes it's their money.
And goodwill.
And I don't want to do that.
So if you're busy right now, when you're free, we can discuss. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Give me how that would be said in different language, maybe in a client situation. Let's keep it real simple. Let's say, hey, I see that you do great logos. I'd love a logo for my business.
Fantastic. First, now we're going to get super deep here. One thing that I do, and people are going to find this a little bit strange, is I don't believe anything you say. I operate under the idea that there are no right answers to wrong questions. So when you say, I need a new logo, I don't take that as gospel. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and goes back to therapy, is the request legitimate? If the request is illegitimate, we have to find the right request. And I don't want to work with a client who comes in self-diagnosed, self-prescribed. I need a new logo that's simple, geometric, and has triangles in it. That's super prescriptive. Well, do you need a logo? Let's talk about that. So let's go back, step out of the meta and say, great, fantastic. I'd love to help you with making you a new logo. But before we do this, I have to ask, what is the thing that's motivating this idea that you need a new logo? Tell me more about that. Is it motivated by a business change, marketing change? What is going on that you've come to this conclusion that you need a new logo?
Chris, we really need a logo. We're just going through an overhaul of some of the things that represent our business, and we've come to a decision that having a logo would be important for us.
So you have no logo currently?
No, we have one, but it was done on the fly.
I see.
You know, it's not sexy. You know, it doesn't pop when I see it. It doesn't make me feel like it actually represents our business.
Okay. So you're pretty convinced that a new logo is the thing that you need right now?
Yeah.
Because the last thing I would want to do is to charge you good money, because you will pay me good money to do this, to deliver you a logo, and later on you find out, oh my God, we have a Marcom problem, or our website sucks, or our company culture is rotten to the core, or just our branding is off. So I want to say this. If you force me to take your money, I will take your money. I will do what you ask for, and I think you'll be delighted with the results. However, I want to make sure it's in alignment with a bigger goal. There's this expression in the medical field, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. And we're in this prescription part right now. But you tell me how you want to proceed.
I want to end the scene, honestly.
End the scene. Go ahead. What do you want to say then?
I want to say that, I mean, I've done this dance with you before. So what I'm hearing is you're pushing me into uncomfortable thinking, right? But at the same time, when I feel that as a client, I'm like, okay, this guy's been around the block.
Yes.
This guy is a trustworthy person. This guy is fair. So I'm matching parallels to relationships that are not professional. Like we started with talking about wives. I wonder if the client is going to be like, dude, I just want a logo. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I'm asking you for a service. Can we do it? I feel like there's clients like that. And then I feel like there's other clients that would lean in, right? The reason why I ended the scene is because I wanted to go ahead and lean in. I mean, you would have done the dance and you would have really extracted what it was. And is it a marketing problem? Is it whatever problem? And that's fine. But I didn't want to detour us. So the objective for you is in that moment, getting them to really think, getting them to know exactly what they want and pushing them to a no. And I wonder, are you not worried that they're going to get frustrated with you? Are you not worried that maybe you might lose the business? Are you not worried that in a relationship setting, for example, I can see, like, let's say your wife's with your kids, and I don't want to digress here, but let's say your wife's with your kids and she's like, Chris, can you go grab me that jacket? And you sit there and you're freaking grilling her with questions, right? And you're like, well, what jacket, babe? What closet is it in? And it's like, well, forget it, Chris. I could go get the jacket myself, right? And I feel like many people, when they're in that pocket of having a dialogue with someone, they're scared to take it all the way, right? Because they don't want to be perceived as annoying, or they don't want to be perceived as like not an expert in what they do. So walk me through the navigation that you're doing there. I know you're very comfortable in pushing those questions, but how to make sure that you get the intended result that is most helpful for the other person.
We're going to have multiple timelines collapse on top of each other. I'm going to weave this thing into a beautiful tapestry for you. When we know in our private lives, when our partners ask for something and we are afraid of asking for more and we deliver the wrong thing, that little bit of discomfort will lead to a giant argument. Because what will happen is this, and I know it doesn't take a giant imagination to picture both moments happening. You go and put in the energy and effort thinking you're doing a good deed, an expression of love, but the person who receives this, like, you freaking jackass donkey, you got me the wrong thing. This is stupid. Now I got to go return it. You go return it. And you're sitting there muttering in your breath, God dang it. I had things to do, but I went out of my way to do this, spending valuable time, energy, and resources to get you what you want. And it's going to be a big old fight. Because you're feeling like righteously indignant and unappreciated, misunderstood, and all the kind of bad negative emotions.
Did all these things. Like, why aren't you
Have you
grateful
been here before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you know what that feels like. But yet we voluntarily commit ourselves to repeating the exact same crime time and time again.
Ooh.
Whose fault is that?
That's good.
If you know that the outcome is semi-predictable, that there's a high probability that you're going to lead to a negative outcome where you walk away unhappy and your partner walks away unhappy, and you continue to avoid that little moment of friction because you're afraid to have the conversation, then you are voluntarily agreeing to have this miscommunication, these negative emotions. You're saying, I'm going to roll the dice. 50% of times I'm right, 50% of times I'm wrong. In a personal relationship, those are not good odds.
Right.
It's like, would you bet $1 million on a coin toss? Most people would say that's a bad odd. I want at least 51%. But what if it could be 70-30 or 80-20 or 90-10? There's no guarantees in life. But if you ask and you're clear and you play back and then you go do that thing. Now in that moment, she's like, oh, Mo, just do the thing already. But then on that day of that event that you bring the right thing for her parents or for your kids, and like, that's my man. That's my man right there. He listens and he gets me, and he took the time to pay attention, so he'll know. What are the odds of you screwing it up then? Very low.
Very low.
Very low. It won't be a guarantee because people do change their mind and they forget that they told you to do that. To which then you'll be righteously indignant at the same time, right? And that's okay. And you'll swallow that because that doesn't matter because it's about the relationship anyways.
Right.
Let's move this into professional realm. Most people can identify this, whether you have a client or not. You know personally this has happened to you before. No relationship's perfect. Not with your parents, not with your siblings, and definitely not with your partner in life. If we take it into the professional realm, client says, I need X, Y, and Z. And you're like, got it, I'm going to go do it. Because I'm afraid of the perception of being annoying. I'm asking too many questions. Like, don't you just get it? You're not a professional. Haven't you done this before?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And then you go do that thing, and they're going to love it. And Blair writes about this. Blair Enns writes about this. And we become addicted to the reveal. That I'm going to use my powers of intuition, my artistic integrity or instincts or whatever, and I'm just going to put it in front of you, and you're going to hoist me up on your shoulder. And it's such a high that you can get. Like, you didn't even tell me, and I just figured it out. Aren't that amazing? And we're willing to risk 80% of the times we're going to get it wrong, and 20% of the times we'll get it right. And then the client's like, what's this? What is this? And you're like, what do you mean? And now what's happening is your reptilian brain is kicking in. It's time to fight because you're not going to run. And you're going to think, I just gave you the most genius thing. Why can't you see the greatness in which I've given you? You only paid me for 30 hours worth of work, but I gave you 75 of my blood, sweat, and tears. You ingrate. You Neanderthal. You don't appreciate art, do you? And you're getting in the way of my art. You may not say any of those words, but that's what you feel in your heart. And they can sense that too. Because you know what? Creatives aren't that good at masking their emotions. They're like, oh, okay, you know what they're thinking? I need to go back and read the contract. And why are they thinking that? Because I'm going to fire your ass and I want my money back. And I will tell every person that thinks about working with you not to work with you. So, worth the risk? I don't think so. But you said something else and I wrote it down. You said, you asking these kinds of questions immediately made me feel uncomfortable. I want to unpack that for a little bit. But then you said, because you asked those questions, I simultaneously perceive you as a professional. You've done this before, haven't you? So our intention is to be perceived as professional, but what we're doing is the opposite of creating the air of professionalism.
So true.
Your level of discomfort, let me ask, and I have a theory, I kind of already know the answer, but why are you uncomfortable?
Why was I uncomfortable as a client?
Yeah.
Because you're putting me on the spot to identify things I don't know. And I might have been a client that had a meeting with my team and we sat down and we're like, yeah, we need this. Well, this is what we want. And then you come in and you ask me these questions and now I have to like, this is going to be a lot more work. What if he's right? And I'm uncomfortable again because like I feel as if I was so certain walking into this meeting and now just by these few questions, I'm a little uncertain. I don't know anymore if this is what I want. I don't know if I'm capable of doing the things that we might unpack here. I don't know if I'm ready to get into all of this right now. I also don't know if I want to deal with all these questions. So the uncomfort is really, you're challenging my thinking, and that's that feeling that I'm having in the moment with you.
Perfect. That's exactly what's happening. You see what's happening here? The parallels between work and life, they're the
100%,
same.
100%.
That person's in a rush.
Yep.
They've already made the decision when we don't know what those decisions are. We're just catching them in this moment. And they're like, I don't have a lot of time. Just do this thing. See you later. Bye. And then we say, okay, what are we going to do with that? And most likely we're going to go back to our studio if they were to give us the job, stressed out of our minds, say, I don't know what they want.
So true.
So instead of doing one version, we do 55 versions. It's all a guess. And I used to do this. I'm speaking from experience here. We used to think the way we win work is we overwhelm the client with amazing variety of options. And you know there's the paradox of choice. The more options you show them, the harder it is for them to make a decision. So I didn't show them like 2 or 3 logo options. I showed them 18. And the natural question is, where do we go from here? I don't know how to pick. And I used to think, did my job. They don't know how to pick. So then I get to guide them through the process of picking. As I've evolved as a creative person, as a business person, I now present one logo. I've already done all the thinking. We've done it together, actually. We know all these other options are not going to be right for you. Therefore, the bullseye, instead of being this big, is like that big. It's the size of a thimble. And that means we get to use our experience and energy and just create the world's best dart, and we can hit it. And we hit it so hard. We don't just show you surface level thinking. We show you what the logo looks like in a multitude of applications, how it might look as a textile on a bus, as an ad campaign. We write the copy for the ad campaign to show you. So while I would say average designers are going into that room, showing them 35 different logo options that are half baked, half thought out, haven't been researched, haven't been checked against competitors. They haven't thought about the system. We've taken it all the way to the end. So now all the client has to do is like, is that what we talked about? And the answer almost always, yes, it is. So you never have to then deal with, I think you just picked a typeface, right? Or that doesn't feel big enough. So here's the thing. What young designers, inexperienced designers, and I would consider like that lower tier of like Fiverr, Upwork, 99 Designs level designer, those young designers, what they do is they think the more intricate and illustrative the logo is, the better it is. So they think a pizza parlor, let's get a pizza guy spinning, throwing pizzas in there, and a guy named Mario or Luigi or somebody as an icon or a mascot, and they invent stuff because they think, I can't just typeset this in Helvetica. It's not going to work. Or I can't use one of these other typefaces that feels right. So what happens is they make overly ornate logos because they think like the clients think. So if I design a logo that's beautiful, that's timeless, like say the Exxon logo, beautiful logo, they don't need to change that logo ever. Okay. It's basically Helvetica with overlapping X's. And that logo is worth $100,000. And all the designers drive by and they look at this, these young, inexperienced designers like, that was so easy. It was just Helvetica with one flourish. What they don't understand is when you design systems and you show the client, it's not just the typeface, it's all the thinking that happens behind it.
Right.
How it's going to appear as a bunch of different lockups and how it's going to be used over time. They now understand what many sophisticated buyers of design understand. Our job is not to make it complicated. Our job is to make it simple, memorable, iconic, and understandable. And it's not supposed to illustrate what we do. It's supposed to capture a feeling, an idea. That's the difference. So when you just present a typeface, just a typeface, and you don't explain anything, you don't show the system, they're going to say, yeah, my kid brother can type that in a computer. Why am I paying you to do this? You're inviting that reaction. So you compensate, instead of doing the system and the system thinking, you compensate by overcomplicating the logo and showing 35 more options. So you justify your keep. Not a way to work.
So here's how I'm understanding this, and I want you to break me down or my thinking down if I missed any gaps here. The punchline that I'm understanding is slow down to speed up. What you are doing is in the beginning, before, whether it's in a personal relationship or a professional relationship, you are doing your due diligence to really understand what it is that they need or what it is they think they need and any gaps in their thinking and their judgment. Setting expectations clearly so you can fall back on those expectations in case conversations happen when the result is given. Now, is that fair to describe? Okay. Yeah. But we know many people don't do this. You've said that multiple times throughout this conversation.
Yep.
What is happening in the moment that is preventing them from stopping this voluntary agreement to the negative outcome over and over and over again? Is it psyche? Is it emotional? What is it? What do you think it is? What is your prescription?
It is everything that you've said already. You've already articulated, and I wrote those words down. Number one, we have a fear of being perceived as not professional. We're afraid that by asking questions, we'll appear as annoying. We're not comfortable with our language skills and being able to challenge the clients in ways that are constructive. There's a whole book, it's on the shelf. It's called The Challenger Sale. That the point is not to get the sale, but to ask questions to make the person think. Because then you rise above the rest. Imagine you and I are in a pitch meeting and there's like 20 other competitors.
Yeah.
We don't even know what we're doing. What do you think our odds are of getting the client to trust us, to believe in us, to see their vision? Much, much higher than those other kids, I promise you. And we don't even have a portfolio. We can go in there and we can win it without a portfolio. So it's this discomfort. And you use very specific words, like we're grilling the client. We're putting them in the hot seat. We're challenging them. We're moving them from a certain to an uncertain state on purpose. We're not going to be perceived as professional. But the problem is, no one taught you how to be a professional with a client. I
would argue no one taught you how to be a professional in your relationships either when it comes to this kind of communication,
yes.
to be honest.
Or to be an ideal partner.
To be an ideal partner.
Professional, but that's a different kind of relationship there. So in a business context, how'd you learn these rules? Probably from other artists who didn't succeed in business themselves, imagining how it's supposed to work with the safety and context of academia. So they paint a very idealistic picture of how it's supposed to work without any real understanding of really how it works. I went to one of the best design schools in the country. No one there taught me this. So I was freshly graduated into the world, not knowing how you play the game. And the game that's played in art school is whoever does the best work wins. Naturally. That seems about right. It's also why sometimes the highest performing athletes are total D-bags in real life. They learn how to play one kind of game really well, but they didn't learn how to be a freaking human.
That's good.
And why is it so unusual that there are athletes who are actually good people, and we write about them. We cherish them. And the rest of them are D-bags. So you know how to excel at making something. It doesn't make you a good person. It doesn't make you a good communicator. It doesn't make you a good partner. It definitely doesn't make you a good client or a buyer or a seller.
So a person who's hearing this and their level of awareness has now elevated, right? Let's assume we'll make that very broad stroke assumption. And they're sitting there and they may not have good internal dialogue. So they may be in a state of like, oh, damn, I handled that last sale wrong. I should know what Chris is saying.
Maybe.
Man, in my relationship, I was trying to be a good partner, but I was actually forcing my own selfish desires of like being good or doing the right thing. And it's like, that was more about me. What is something that they need to make peace with to not feel frantic in these situations, to not make these same mistakes again? I don't want you to give me tactics. I think this is more of a mindset, psychological thing. What would you recommend they do to begin exiting this loop that they've been playing?
The part that always confuses me about people and how they work and why I'm a horrible teacher, because when I hear a good idea, I just apply.
Right.
But clearly that's not how most people work. It only took one time for my therapist to tell me, say this to your wife. I never had to bring that same issue to her ever again, nor anything that remotely sounded like that, because I'm an intelligent, creative person. I can apply this broadly to lots of things.
You wired different, bro. You're wired different.
For me to help that person who's watching this video and thinking, gosh, how do I do this? How do I have to change my mind? Well, first you have to just be willing to accept that maybe there's a better way. I did a webinar recently, and the webinar was about having a strong bias towards action. I said, from my perspective, the biggest predictor of future success is a person who has a strong bias towards action. And a person from my community, former member of my community, said, Chris, I disagree with that.
Oh.
Sometimes the best thing is to do nothing, to sit, to be still, to be quiet, and to meditate. What are your thoughts on that? I said, hey, if doing nothing works, do nothing. Do more of nothing. I don't know how doing nothing changes anything. Doing nothing changes nothing. Now, I understand if you're busy running around trying lots of things and nothing seems to work, that you need to take a moment to reflect. Mm-hmm. But I think it's not in the action that is the problem. It's your process of choosing which action to take was the problem. Mm. Okay?
Wait. Unpack that for me. My brain couldn't even understand that last statement. One more time.
So when there's an input and an output, there's a cause and effect. Mm-hmm. So when the effect isn't what we want, we blame the cause. Like if I'm not successful, I'm not happy, if I'm not feeling like I'm living my best life, then I say, well, taking action is the thing that led to that. And I said, no, it's not. You just took the wrong action.
Oh, got it.
Thinking, the decision, like why you chose that action. For example, I took an online course. I didn't get the results. Well, let's unpack why you picked that online course to take. Let's talk about the commitment that you made. And so there were 300 options that you picked. Why'd you pick this one? Because they're the loudest. They pressured me into doing it. And they said all the things I wanted to hear. I'm like, well, what is that? Easy, no work, instant results. And so they understand how to sell to you. They hooked into your base emotions and your desires to be understood, to have instant results. I sell people difficult solutions that are hard to do. Because I know in my life, nothing worth having is easy. And so they're like, whoa, there are two people who offer two different paths forward. One who's like, it's going to suck. You're going to question yourself, but I promise you it'll get better at some point. The other person's like, it's going to be easy. I guarantee you the results. You're going to love everything. It's a miracle pill versus the not miracle workout. That's pain. It's slow, but it's real and it's lasting. This is quick, potentially, but you're going to be on that pill for a long time. And the truth is, it was a sugar pill. And you bought it. So you're like, well, courses don't work. Coaches don't work. All these scammer gurus out there. Why'd you pick that one? So people don't want to take responsibility for what it is that they're doing.
That's the theme I'm hearing.
Right? There's no accountability. I believe in radical accountability. You are where you are outside of like you 1 through 18, which you don't have a lot of control over. Mm-hmm. But now if you're in your adulthood, You live where you live because you choose to live there, or you choose not to live somewhere else. You work with a horrible boss because you're too scared to go find another job. You're stuck in a relationship because you're scared. You think this is the best you're ever going to get.
So the narrative that you're perpetuating constantly is from a place of lack, from a place of inability, from a place of lack of accountability.
Well, it's very much victim mindset. All these things happen to me.
Not for me,
I'm not in control.
I'm out of control.
I'm not in control. I have no agency. I have no autonomy. I'm not self-directed. I have no free will. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people like this. Chris, why does this keep happening to me? Oh, I'm powerless to change this. I say, I guess you are. I cannot argue that. You choose to be stuck, so you will be stuck.
We're talking about a lot, and as you do, you got me thinking. But I want to stay in this particular pocket around, it's not necessarily what you did, but it was the thinking that led you to doing the thing that you did that's flawed.
Yeah.
I would love to understand, because if someone's watching and they're in this perpetual loop of taking action on things that are not serving them, then we need to change the thinking, correct?
Yes.
How would you go about helping someone change their thinking, or what would you recommend to someone to rewire that thinking so they can take better action?
Okay. The first thing is, and this is going to be a painful thing for them to do, is to imagine their lives on this course that they're on right now.
Okay.
And say, well, 10 years later, is this going to get any better if I continue down this path? 20 years later, by the time you're ready to die on your deathbed and you look back and you're in hospice and you look back on all the decisions and you hadn't changed anything, are you happy with the decisions you've made to stay in this state? Physically, stay in the state you live in, or stay in this mental state? And if the answer is no, I want you to go to the darkest way that's going to turn out. Well, I'm going to live an unfulfilled life. I'll be living hand to mouth. I wasn't able to take care of my parents and I watched them suffer. My family, my parents, my wife, my partner had some emergency and I didn't have the finances to support them. The work never got better, and actually the work got worse over time. Instead of going from $30 an hour to $20 an hour to like, I'll just take anything. I'll do this for a sandwich.
So you're saying
go to the extreme.
Take it to the extreme negative. If you continue down this path, what would it lead to?
Right. When I say the extreme negative, I don't mean to be a doomsday or catastrophizing it. What I'm saying is look at the trend lines.
Okay.
And then take the trend line all the way to the end. Okay? So we know this. There's something called the sunk loss fallacy, or the loss aversion bias. It's like, we have a stock. It's going down and we're losing money, but we won't sell the stock. Why? Because if we sell it, we'll lose money.
Right.
So we think if we don't sell it, we won't lose money. That's the thinking. So your life is that stock. Things are going down. Your relationship is not as strong. You're not as intimate. You're not as connected. You don't have as much joy. Your count is going from 100,000 to 80,000 to 60,000, and you think, oh, it'll be okay. It's magical thinking. So I take my moments when I don't like something, I take it to that moment instantly. And it forces me to make a decision. Do I want to be there? Because I can see the trend lines. And conversely, if your trend line's moving up and you're getting more opportunities and you're being appreciated for all that you do, and that more opportunities keep opening up and you're worth more every single time you open your mouth, this is where you want to be. You're doing the best work of your life. You're in the best shape of your life. You're the clearest you've ever been. Well, stop doing that. That would make no sense whatsoever.
That makes a lot of sense.
So when things are working really well,
why would you stop something going?
Just stop. Well? And people do this all the time.
That's very true.
Oh, Chris, I ran a Google ad campaign 3 years ago. I had so many clients, and now I don't have any clients. What'd you do? I stopped running ads. Chris, I was working with a coach. I made so much progress in my life, and then I stopped working with a coach, and my life has gone downhill. I don't know why. People do this all the time because people have an inflated sense of knowledge and wisdom and experience. They do something right once, and they start lecturing and telling people like what to do.
What did you say the other day? You were like, success has many fathers, failures has only one mother. I feel like that's in alignment here. When a lot of success is happening, it's like, oh yeah, we're doing great, this and that. I'm on that trajectory. It's like, all right, we can keep it up, that inflated sense. And then it's like, no wonder why the results haven't kept coming, because you didn't humble yourself and just stay in that pocket of what works. whether it's coaching, whether it's Google ads. And then with failure, which is the negative side, you almost like want to retreat. You don't even want to look into it. Before I ask the question that I have, do you have more thoughts about this? Because you said the first thing someone needs to do is identify the trend lines and take it to its extreme negative.
Yes, I have more steps.
Go ahead.
When you see where it's going, you don't like where it's going, make a new decision. My thing is, people are always looking for perfect. And it's a pursuit that fools go on. It's the pursuit of fools. Find somebody that you resonate with, that has done what it is that you want to do, that's been there before. It doesn't have to be the perfect person. In fact, oftentimes it's never the perfect person. And do what they tell you to do. And do it religiously. Don't try to alter it. Creative people have this problem like, oh, here's how you make a pie. Well, I want to switch out ingredients. Like, you haven't even made one good pie in your life.
Why are we like this? Like, every time I talk with you, I feel like you're wired different. Wired for wealth. But that it's almost like self-sabotage. It's like you hire a personal trainer, the personal trainer, discovers, puts you on a regimen, and then when you're in the middle of the workout, it's like, well, this is something that I don't want to do. I don't want to do it like this. It's like, you don't know how to do it like the personal trainer who's gotten the success. Why are you trying to reformat the way in which it's done that will lead you to success? And I've had my resistance with you over my years.
Everybody does.
And in my reflection, I'm like, dude, you could have saved yourselves a few months by just blind faith doing this. So that would be a detour of like, what is causing us to stay in? I know it's probably fear and the discomfort of change and all these things and trying to stay comfortable and the ego, but there's a lot of disservice that you're doing to yourself, your life, and your loved ones by staying in that loop.
Let me tell you what it is. I said it before, and I think there will be a better expression when I hear it. I'll use that new expression instead. We have an overinflated sense of self, like we are capable of more than we are, that we think we're smarter and we're wiser than we are. And this is what I know, and this will hurt some people. I find that the most educated people have a similar idea. The more I learn I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's always ignorant people who think they have all the answers. So if you come to that conclusion, I know how to do this. I don't need this. I'm going to modify this workout. I'm not going to eat that food. You're being really ignorant. That's why I say it's going to hurt some people. So you know why you say I'm wired different? Because I'm smart enough to know I don't know anything. And I hold this position of, it's called the Hold Strong Ideas Weekly.
Mm-hmm.
I have an opinion. It's a very strong opinion. But as soon as a new one comes, I let it go. And that's the problem. People become so attached to these things because it's scary to try a new thing out.
It is.
Right?
It is.
And I've told you, I hire coaches. I go on programs. I hear new ideas. I hear criticism for people who are underqualified to even be in the room with me. But I'll listen to it. I'll absorb it. And I'll ask myself, is this helpful to me? Well, I don't care your qualifications. I don't care what your CV looks like. If it's a good idea, I should take that idea. And that's what it means to be a critical thinker. It's not to say that I'm critical of your thoughts. I'm critical of my thoughts. You just happen to be in the room when I'm critiquing my own thoughts. That's why I love having stimulating dialogue with people who understand bigger, more soulful, deep ideas, because then we can do that dance. And that's why I enjoy our conversations so much.
Well, thank you. I enjoy our conversations too. Give me the next step then.
Okay. So you've identified you don't want to go where you're going.
Right.
You're going to pick somebody that mostly gets what you want.
Yes.
And the third step is then do what they say very faithfully, very religiously, and try to do it without modification. At some point, you'll have grown and changed, and you won't even recognize who you are. And then you start to say, what is my way of doing this? We tend to skip that step. Okay? So we don't learn it. We try to modify right away, and then we just make a hot mess of everything. So first learn it, do it faithfully, like you could do it in your sleep. You put in your hours of repetition, and then you start to modify and say, like, what is my way of doing this? How do I make this different, better, or tailored for a different audience, something? How do I say this in my voice? And that's when you start to experience a level of discovery and invention, and I think it's a beautiful place to be. And if you just do that and repeat that over and over again, you're going to be exactly where you want to be. In fact, you'll be beyond where you think you should be. I am doing things, experiencing things, Mo, that I could have never dreamt. Let me tell you, you've been here a couple times. Drigo's been here. And the thing that you say to me, usually both of you, it's the same. You're grinning ear to ear. It's like, I can get used to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can. You could get used to living in Southern California, one of the most expensive places to live, in idyllic weather, living in a multi-million-dollar home when there's like beautiful designer furniture and equipment, hanging out with really good people, eating really good food, because that's the best of the best. We get to experience that together. And if you ask me, when I was a 17-year-old kid living in the valley, in Silicon Valley, like, where were you going to be living? I'm like, I don't know. How much money would you make? I hope $100,000 someday. What kind of car would you drive? Maybe a BMW 5 Series someday. That was it. That was the limitation of my own thinking, my own experiences. But I'm telling you, if you adopt this mindset, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but people are fascinated by the way I look at the world.
Yes.
Well, I'm here to be your teacher. But people don't want to learn. They hear it and they go on and do it exactly the way they've always been doing it. I forget who said this. I'd love to cite the source, but there's a line. It's a woman. If nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yes.
And if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. So keep getting it. That's why I said to this person, if doing nothing is the way you make progress, continue to do nothing. I say that in all seriousness. And sometimes doing nothing is the right way, but very rarely is it the right way.
I got to ask you this question that hit me while you were talking about the 4 steps of finding the trend, finding the coach, do with faith, everything they say, and then iterating by discovering your own way. Are people that are suffering or experiencing these loops of not getting to where they want to be, not properly identifying the trends to then go down this path?
I suspect so, but I suspect they've not even asked themselves to look at the trends.
Amazing. Because the more me and you have these conversations, every time there's a problem that we ever discuss, outside of like the tactical, like here's the questions you want to say in a sales framework, or here's the negotiation technique, or here's how to use Photoshop, it always comes back to this mindset thing of being in your own way. In my own personal experience, I don't believe that no one is going to do the work. I believe that they need some sort of event to happen for the work to be meaningful for them. Because there's a lot of, and it's funny, when I went to Egypt for 7 months and was away from the United States, I realized that there wasn't this perpetual, like, how to make your life better, mindset, and all these things. Like I feel like on my Facebook feed, and maybe that's what I want to see, it's like improvement. It's like, I didn't see much of that in Egypt. So in the United States, I believe that there's a lot of this perpetuation of things that you're supposed to be doing, of things that you should be doing. And it makes people feel exhausted because, like, well, I guess just existing is not enough, or just doing. And I know as entrepreneurs, we have this desire to constantly self-improve and grow. But for those that are listening and that are hearing this and they're like, I want to grow, I want to do this, you have to find a reason that makes it meaningful to you so you can be consistent in its pursuit. Do you have any thoughts against or for what I just said? Anything like that?
Well, I think your feed is a reflection of your state of mind. People think the feed is this magical, weird thing.
I mean, I know that.
That you're being shoved things down your throat.
Yeah.
The fact that you stop engaging with certain kinds of content, or maybe you weren't seeing it as much, or wasn't in your feed because you're in a different country and they don't target you because they think people maybe in Egypt don't have the kind of money to spend.
Could be.
Okay. And so when you're back in the US, the people you follow, the people you interact with, you've mentioned many times, I'm with a bunch of killers right now. Well, what do killers want? They need to kill. And then you want to be a killer. Yeah. And that's how that works. So it's kind of education by osmosis.
Sure.
Law of averages. That's what's happening there.
Sure.
And I think there's something that's really beautiful about the United States that doesn't exist in many countries. This idea of exceptionalism, that within each person, the humble person, woman or man, child, can rise up from their humble beginnings and then achieve anything. And it's a very remarkable thing that is encouraged there. Sometimes it's called the evils of capitalism and this chasing the rat race and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? Where do you think most of the new ideas come from? The brands that change the world, the ideas that change the world. It happens oftentimes here.
Yeah.
And there are countries, my wife's from Taiwan, there's a very happy middle class there, but they don't push to be more. What you get from that is a lot of people at peace. The shop owner who makes noodles and bakes bread, they've become like European almost instantly. And it's okay to exist like that. And it's fine. But then I asked some people, like, how much money you make here? And they tell me, and it's atrociously low. I'm like, wow, that's why you can't buy anything. You don't have discretionary income, and that's really tricky. So I'm not all for like, let's burn ourselves out and let's try to get more and more and more, and the pursuit of pursuit. I think there can be a balance, and I hope that I'm living that balance where I get to spend a lot of free time talking to people like you, being able to go on trips with my family or for work or whatever, and I choose everything. I volunteer to create the webinars. I volunteer to stay up to 2 or 3 in the morning. And if I don't want to, I just say cancel it, and it's fine.
I love that. I love the philosophy of I volunteer. And I too, now that I'm continuing to progress, enjoy being able to have conversations like this. And yes, that was a segue to end this conversation, because we're going to have more conversations like this on the channel. I know that this started from a place of relational, and then we went into role play, and we went into health and wellness and well-being and becoming better. For me, what I learned from Chris, one of the biggest themes that kind of overarches all of this is a level of presence in your life, both personally and professionally, to be able to observe these things as they're happening, then ask yourself questions as to how can I improve this so the situations that I do not like or the situations that don't benefit me can continue to progress and improve. That is probably the biggest takeaway I get from you, because I feel like when I'm in your presence, I even feel more present. So I'm trying to find the theme, the golden thread that brings this all together. But please tell us in the comments before we wrap this video up, what was your biggest takeaway? And do your best to try to maybe make it into a nice one-liner and zinger. And the one that gets the most likes from the rest of the community, maybe we'll expand on in another video. What are your thoughts?
That sounds pretty good.
All right.
If you get stuck on answering that question, I'm going to reframe that question. I think Mo did a great job of setting us up. I'd like to ask you a slightly different question, which is, what is the one thing that you heard today that you can apply in the next 24 hours? Because you know my bias towards action. So it's great that you're a great listener, but it's better if you're a great doer. And so I'm like, less thinking, more doing. Let's see where that leads us.
Mo doing. You know what I'm saying? You got him Mo doing. That's what we're going to call this show. Mo doing. No. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. To all the futurists, we'll continue to see you in the future. Chris, any final thoughts before we wrap?
That's it for me. See you guys next time.